With Hawaiians, here in Hawaii, if you are from Hawaii, we do make that distinction between Hawaiians that are, part of the Hawaiian ethnic group, that are Hawaiian by ancestry. And if then you are from Hawaii, but not maybe of that ethnic group or of that ancestry, then we just say local people, pretty much. Or if you're living in Hawaii, we'll just say, oh, you live in Hawaii or you're from Hawaii. So I did kind of want to make that distinction. How Bitcoin can really impact Hawaiians and then local people will be a little bit different. Us local people, right? That might not be ethnically Hawaiian. Because of our high cost of living here, we really feel, any sort of price increases, effects from inflation really harshly. Bitcoin offers optionality for a lot of us that, I think there might be a lot more Bitcoiners in Hawaii than really make themselves known. But because it's a very, 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 very small community here, it seems like more people might be shy to make it known or public, right? That they either hold Bitcoin or that they are also recognizing the solutions and the problem sets that something like a decentralized monetary system brings about.
Brittany, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Let's start from the beginning, Brittany. Where did your Bitcoin journey begin? Was there an aha moment when you realized this was your calling?
So the beginning of the journey and the aha moment, kind of a big gap in between. In 2014, I was managing a co-working space in Honolulu. Shout out to Box Jelly. um, and one of our tenants was a makerspace. And those tenants, along with several of the Box Jelly founders, they were insisting that I look into Bitcoin. At the time, I only understood it as very generally, and I thought of it as a fad. And so it wasn't until, 2020 that I got back into Bitcoin. And then 2022 with the Bitcoin as Freedom panel at the Bitcoin conference with Alex Gladstein, um, Yeonmi Park, Farida Nabuema, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, and Fedi Al Salamin. Their panel, I guess, was what really brought that aha moment. And from then, I've just been Bitcoin only and focused on Bitcoin.
Nice. The early days of breaking into Bitcoin must have been challenging. I think that's the case for most people. What were some of the biggest hurdles that you faced, especially as someone transitioning from a corporate job to caregiving and then Bitcoin education?
Time and money were probably the two sort of biggest hurdles to tackle. Time, just being able to commit the amount of studying that it really takes to understand Bitcoin. And not only just Bitcoin, the protocol, or what's going on with the network, but also, those use cases and needs for Bitcoin, right? And then money, just because Hawaii has one of the highest cost of livings in the US. And I think everybody here might have a little hard time saving any money. So let alone putting any money towards Bitcoin and saving in Bitcoin. So those were sort of the two that kind of stuck out. And then, the deeper that you get into Bitcoin, maybe the more time you're committing to it, then it's sort of the social obstacles as being maybe not ostracized, but heavily criticized for doing so from those that are sometimes closest in your network, right, or in your friends and family. So that's been a little difficult too.
Was there ever a moment where you thought, this isn't for me? And if so, how did that push you beyond that doubt?
I don't know if I've really had that moment. Sometimes it's a little intimidating amongst developers, I think, because locally in Honolulu, I really became active through Honolulu Bit Devs, and it took me probably about a year to understand, a quarter of what we talk about in those meetups, but sometimes that's a sort of self-imposed kind of intimidation, where I end up pedestalizing maybe those that are very technically familiar. But you know, other than that, I mean, I think I give a lot of credit to maybe this cohort's round of Bitcoin influencers, especially British Hodl and Oliver Velez, because their message is pretty straightforward. Get to one Bitcoin, right? And it was basically through their encouragement that I thought, wow, this really is for everyone then.
Yes, British is one of my favorite people in the space. I interviewed him a while back. He's a crazy guy, but um, what do you think it is about your message or your approach that resonates so deeply with your audience, right? Because like Hawaii is a kind of a different beast from being on the mainland. So like I know that your connection is, of course, in its early stages. You're still growing it, but with the people that you do connect with now, like what do you think it is about your aura or your energy that resonates so deeply with people that you are connecting with right now?
Those, I guess, that will take the time to really listen, or that have approached me about getting into Bitcoin. I just try to be a conduit from everything that I pick up. I think we take for granted a lot of the times when we're so entrenched in the space, we forget what, we know and might not be so obvious to others. And so, sort of just being a repeater for either the latest news that's going on in Bitcoin, so that it helps to solidify the reality that this is not just magic internet money. This is actually real technology that's bringing about real solutions to many different issues. So I guess when I can do that and sort of be like a repeater, um, people are more encouraged by that, I think.
Yes, and I definitely want to commend you, Brittany, for some of the phenomenal work that you're doing in Hawaii. Because upon this interview and doing research about you, I had no idea about Base 58. I had no idea about Honolulu Bitcoin. Of course, there's Bitcoiners all over the world, but what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced trying to bridge the gap between Bitcoin's global potential and the unique challenges that Hawaiians face?
With Hawaiians, here in Hawaii, if you are from Hawaii, we do make that distinction between Hawaiians that are, part of the Hawaiian ethnic group, that are Hawaiian by ancestry. And if then you are from Hawaii, but not maybe of that ethnic group or of that ancestry, then we just say local people, pretty much. Or if you're living in Hawaii, we'll just say, oh, you live in Hawaii or you're from Hawaii. So I did kind of want to make that distinction. How Bitcoin can really impact Hawaiians and then local people will be a little bit different. Us local people, right? That might not be ethnically Hawaiian. Because of our high cost of living here, we really feel, any sort of price increases, effects from inflation really harshly. Bitcoin offers optionality for a lot of us that, I think there might be a lot more Bitcoiners in Hawaii than really make themselves known. But because it's a very, 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 very small community here, it seems like more people might be shy to make it known or public, right? That they either hold Bitcoin or that they are also recognizing the solutions and the problem sets that something like a decentralized monetary system brings about. So here, I just wish that I could give everyone in Hawaii a little bit of Bitcoin to sort of buffer those effects. And then also for Native Hawaiians, I think it really does provide sort of an optionality outside of a system that, I mean, had frankly stolen their kingdom, right, back in 1893. Um, but now we as in humanity has the technology to sort of give that optionality. And I think that's really, really big.
Yes, and I know you've been vocal about some of the challenges that Pacific Islanders face, which is the physical separation between islands and how the Bitcoin network kind of transcends those barriers. Could you break that down for my audience, why you're so passionate and why that's such a passionate issue for you?
Oh, yes. For Polynesians, Micronesians, Melanesians, everybody that's in the Pacific, basically, our ancestors were seafaring people. You know, they crossed these great lengths of ocean, and without any sort of modern technology that we have today. It's really amazing then to have that sort of diaspora and something that connects us so strongly. But the reality is that is a very large physical barrier as well, right? And in terms of sending resources back home, because on a lot of these smaller islands, you know, I mean, they're going to be even smaller than Oahu. Oahu's only, I think, about 500,000 square miles. I would have to look that up again, but we're sort of we have the bigger land masses here in Hawaii. A lot of these islands are very small, not a lot of optionality for industry, and so remittances are really, really big. Um, in different Polynesian cultures. So something like the Bitcoin network can tie us immediately more together, really removing that third middleman that I think we've just gotten so used to using and relying on, whether it be banks or money remittance services. The fact that to transmit value across, miles and miles of ocean almost instantaneously. Um, that's that's a really big game changer, I think, for a lot of us.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. Do you feel like the Bitcoin community is doing enough to support diverse voices like yourself? Because I know Hawaii is kind of this island far away, and there can be a disconnect between the mainland and Hawaii. Is there still more work to do, in your opinion, on building up the Hawaii Bitcoin community overall?
Oh, certainly. And that's something that we are doing with Honolulu Bitcoin. So previously, Honolulu Bit Devs was most active. And then now that we are trying to engage more people as far as adoption and also influence on policy here in Hawaii, um, we will be restructuring a little bit to be a more general, not only meetup group, but a kind of policy and advocacy group as well. Connecting with different lawmakers and community leaders, but also business owners, and of course, starting different educational initiatives too, so that on the individual level, people are more prepared to onboard to Bitcoin. But we've noticed that more and more people are engaging, want to be active in growing Bitcoin for Hawaii. And so there's a group of us that are focused on that. And for, I guess, more generally for diverse voices in Bitcoin, I think there, of course, could maybe be more like-minded people such as yourself that like recognize, "Oh, okay, there's more than just the um, economic influencers in our space, right? That's get a lot of airtime. There's a lot of people doing many different awesome things on Bitcoin. So um, I think there could be more done, but it's really such a prime time for people to also amplify their own voices and not be so maybe shy or that self-imposed intimidation. Try to just really combat that and keep that away because that's you know even with any sort of platform that someone might be given, you still need to speak up, right? And so I think maybe in this cycle as we get further into it, perhaps there will be um, more ways to amplify those voices. And I think just in general, you know, if you're speaking about Bitcoin at all, it can be a little difficult to amplify your voice against crypto generally. I'll see a lot of different meetups here that get quite a bit of sponsorship. And I've talked with other meetup group organizers, that are Bitcoin only, and we're just amazed at how much more money is in crypto. And it kind of softens the amount of resources that are spent towards Bitcoin. So, but we'll see with maybe more institutional adoption, and recognizing that for this network to really keep going, it's going to be, you know, developers and I think these community groups as well that actually build the use case for Bitcoin that supports its value.
In your own words, what do you think Bitcoin's ultimate purpose is?
It's the same as it has been as far as decentralized value transmitter, right? Money is just the way that we communicate value between each other as human beings. And now that we have the technology to do that on a global scale that's immutable, verifiable, I mean, with anybody, any human being, as long as they are, on the Bitcoin network, I think that that purpose still rings true, and sometimes it can be, um, I think the message can be a little diluted, especially as we see like number go up or um, when, in the political sphere, there's just a debate on if it has any value at all. I think that purpose of decentralization is huge. It really is the cornerstone, of Bitcoin's purpose. You can now farm out the need for trust, right? And sort of third party validation, something that time and time again, we as humans have proven to have weak points at. Right? But now we can actually, I guess, eliminate the need for trust and get back to um, granting and giving trust when deserved or earned on a social level.
And I remember seeing an interview that you did years and years ago about brain drain. And I wanted to ask you, Brittany, like, what role do you think Bitcoin will play in shaping modern culture, especially for younger generations and the younger Hawaiians that are now onboarding into this and using this as like, oh, maybe this is an outlet for me to actually stay in Hawaii and build instead of going overseas or leaving to the mainland to find opportunities.
As they say, fix the money, fix the world. And when we do have more sovereignty, because we actually have the technical capabilities, to establish that. I don't know. I think my guess might be as good as anybody, specifically how it addresses brain drain. But knowing that I can at least keep up with the cost of living at home or that my savings won't be debased, it gives me a little more wiggle room to not have to move to the continent or to the elsewheres, right? And really keep building at home. I think a lot about, because there's a lot of people that are involved in conservation in Hawaii and are doing really, really amazing work ecologically, anthropologically too, as far as preserving different cultural sites, making sure that our endemic species are supported. And, what if the money that they can save isn't continuously devalued and debased? They can continue doing the work that they do. And so that's, I guess, for sectors or jobs that are established, but for new sectors and jobs and opportunities, I would probably just pay attention to what's going on with what's going on Nostr and Bitcoin. As far as the different models that we'll see that will enable people to make a living in a way that they haven't before, or to optimize their industry currently. I think with what Wavelake and Wavelake is doing on Nostr with Bitcoin, that's huge in terms of like copyright law and royalties, how that's distributed, and I think they're really laying the foundation for what can be. Because there's a lot of artists in Hawaii, a lot of musical people too, and that coupled with the highest cost of living, it's not really we're not like LA where we're a music industry center per se. So holding on to the value of your money and then also how to make more of it, I think those two combined will be a solution that our young people will be paving the way for.
Do you have a favorite Bitcoin inspired piece of art or project?
I see a lot of Fractal Encrypt's work on X, and that's really inspiring. I mean, from the mathematical perspective all the way to how they engineer their great pieces of art and the intricacy. That's just, it almost reminds me of like a Da Vinci Code, novel where there's all sorts of secrets in plain sight. And then if you just sort of dig beneath the surface and study it. Um, and Canuto, I remember the last part of their name, but their artwork is really neat as well, just because it illustrates the different network connections, whether it's on the Bitcoin network or on Lightning, or I think they even did a piece with illustrating like the like Nostr relays and messaging in a very unassuming kind of way, with lights and the different like models of how those networks are. It's a really beautiful illustration. um, and those are the two that sort of stick out the most. And oh, actually, when I was in Bitcoin Tokyo, they had a gallery, all of either artists that were depicting different Bitcoin themes, using Bitcoin as a theme, or accepting Bitcoin. They had a nice gallery space for that. And actually, for Hawaiian, she's probably like my favorite artist from from that space. But it's really neat to see, yeah, just different representations coming out, like in Bitcoin art too.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. I know you're doing a lot of different things. You mentioned Tokyo, but you're kind of global now, Brittany, and this is an exciting time for you. And I know that you're going to be leading some workshops at the Africa Bitcoin Conference, which, in my opinion, is a huge deal. What are your goals for these workshops, and what do you hope participants will walk away with?
So the workshop will actually be the Bitcoin LARP that was created by Base 58's founder, Lisa Nighet. She is absolutely amazing as a educator. So with the Bitcoin LARPs, it's a tangible way to learn about the Bitcoin network, something that's very intangible, right? And not very visually represented. So with the Bitcoin LARP, there's teams of people that LARP as a Bitcoin node and basically perform all the functions that a node would do. The initial block download, verifying transactions and blocks, creating some of your own, sending them over the network to other tables of teams that are Bitcoin nodes as well. And it's not very often that you can role play as a computer. So I think it's a pretty unique opportunity. And for those that are very familiar with the Bitcoin protocol, it does offer a chance for you to take on the perspective of your node, which is not something you really do in the everyday, right? And if you know the rules of the protocol, then you already know the rules of the game, which is kind of neat. And then on the other side, if you're maybe totally new to Bitcoin, not very familiar at all, as long as you have basic arithmetic skills and basic reading skills, you can also participate. And I think it's a really neat way to not only learn about the Bitcoin protocol, but about how computer networking works at a very basic level. But you do get an understanding of that by the time you're finished with the workshop. And so that'll be, I think, the biggest sort of objectives for the workshops at the Africa Bitcoin Conference is to have fun, play, and learn, and maybe take on that role as a Bitcoin node that you wouldn't usually do. Everyone walks away with something different every time. It's pretty interesting to see. Base 58, their Bitcoin protocol school that has both online and in-person classes. So
Yes, and I wanted to kind of like expound on that a little bit, Brittany, and ask, why do you think events like the Africa Bitcoin Conference are so critical for global adoption of Bitcoin, especially in those underrepresented regions of the world?
Because those underrepresented regions are really doing, the work. If you look at the speaker lineup at the Africa Bitcoin Conference, I was a little shy to be listed because we have some very big people that are coming to this conference, and big in the terms of what they've done with projects, that they've been working on, either in Bitcoin or with the communities that they've been building. I think it's just amazing that someone like Farida will be there hosting many different speakers and sort of I think is more involved with the programming of the conference itself. Marcel Lorraine that you've had on your show, I think it's, what she's doing with Bitcoin Datas is going to be very foundational, not only for women in Africa on Bitcoin, but I think women everywhere that are concerned with Bitcoin, right? And Gridless. I first saw Gridless when Bitcoin Shooter came through Honolulu, and he premiered his trailer. But it wasn't really until his trailer feature that I understood like how how Bitcoin can really revolutionize energy and be a solution for many energy needs and problems, right? And it wasn't until, I mean, I think I cite gridless pretty often as far as, when people make the argument that, oh, the Bitcoin network takes up so much energy and it's such a energy consumptive kind of way of doing things. But, we have different mining companies like that are making revolutionary strides, in how we use energy and how we scale energy to these rural and remote places. Events like the Africa Bitcoin Conference are really highlighting, what's going on in these underrepresented regions, sort of beyond just like the headlines that we see. And it's beyond those headlines where the Bitcoin network will continue to prove its use case and support the value that it offers. I think one thing that I hear, especially in amongst developers, is like we can't be complacent about Bitcoin and Bitcoin adoption. While all of us are very very supportive, right, of the idea that this is the most, revolutionary financial technology that we've had since coinage was invented, or maybe even beyond that. Yeah, we can't be complacent with the development and adoption of it, on the software side, but then also on the application and adoption side too.
Yes, and I want to switch gears a little bit, Brittany, and kind of talk about the future of Bitcoin. So 10 years from now, where do you see Bitcoin? And are we talking about mainstream adoption, governments trying to ban it, or something entirely different, in your opinion?
2034. 10 years ago was 2014 when I first started to learn about Bitcoin. Let's see. With our most recent US presidential election and having a Bitcoin president, we can expect it to be more mainstream, of course. And with, especially with what Block is doing with like integrating Bitcoin into Cash App and then creating a very simplified sort of hardware device that's very approachable for more people. That'll also encourage mainstream adoption too. There is an interesting discussion that maybe Bitcoin as currency, it won't really, I guess, reach maybe in our lifetime that currency sort of fulfilling that currency need, but there will be a more of an emphasis on the store of value sort of use. And what can that look like? Options trading on Bitcoin, taking out loans with your Bitcoin as collateral. These are things that, following British Hodl and Oliver Velez, they talk about much more, articulately. But that concept that now we have a new financial technology that can't be debased, that we can actually rely on, that then things can really be built on, right? I think we'll just see many different financial products probably. From a regulatory standpoint, this is sort of just my very, very personal opinion, but we do need to watch out for regulation in terms of self-custody, because that also has been discussed in the past, right? You make it hard for the on and off ramps, and really sort of a chokehold around self-custody to where we'll have to then sort of rely on maybe legacy models of a third-party intermediary, them being regulated to be trustworthy, to hold our Bitcoin, to I don't know, to make sure that we're paying the taxes and fees on whatever sort of rules and regulations they might come up with in the future. But yeah, so within the next 10 years, I think there will be a lot of innovation, but again, we can't be complacent on the self-custody aspect either, because that's a huge sort of part of value that we're all able to participate on now that really needs attention. And how do we scale that to more of the masses, to engage with that part of Bitcoin?
Love it, love it. Brittany, I want to ask you something that I think is very pertinent for people to realize about this asset, right? And I think we've had conversations about this off air about just why this asset is important and why this is not only important, but it's a paradigm shifting technology. And I wanted to ask you, what does success look like for you personally? Is it about financial freedom, leaving a legacy, or something deeper?
When you can walk and live in your truth, in your values, when your morals and ethics are supported in the way that you live, I think that's a big marker of success, and something that in these sort of systems that we find ourselves now, it's very challenging to do, and a little unnecessarily challenging if we could just restructure how things are done. And so I think a marker of success for me, maybe a little more tangibly, would be all around local impact, really. Being in Hawaii, we're in a very comfortable space. I mean, physically and literally with the climate, we have the best climate in the world, a culture that really supports community and supporting each other. That complacence, that can lead to a sort of a complacency. And you really see it with Bitcoin adoption, I think. And that's indicative for the rest of the US too. Being the world reserve currency, we can be very comfortable and not having to worry about debasement, not having to worry about inflation, to the point where we are making very, very big changes in how we do things or how we see things or what we take the time and effort to educate ourselves on. So I guess I'll just sort of speak this into the universe, although I'm very shy about saying it. Like, if there could be something like Bitcoin datas that can be rooted for Hawaii children, and children in Hawaii, how can we kind of grow our technology sector that way here? But it'll look like, I guess the near term success would be able to establish more educational opportunities for youth and children here locally as a way to grow our technology sector.
What advice would you give to someone who's now just discovering Bitcoin and wants to make their mark in the space?
If you're just first discovering Bitcoin, definitely educate yourself. Whether that's, I mean, we have such advantage in this modern day, right? I mean, in this versus even 10 years ago, where you could look up pretty much any topic on YouTube University and and become and gather a lot of different resources for that. And not only just, I guess, the sort of like discussions about Bitcoin, but really like, how does the network work? Any sort of computer science topic that you might have a question on, or even theory, right? Like, what is game theory, or what does zero knowledge proof even mean, or what is a blockchain? All of that, the resources are there, and so don't be shy about really just digging in. And I guess you do need a little skin in the game too. At first, I thought, oh, I really need to understand everything about this asset before I like go all in on Bitcoin for my savings. And then actually, it was after that Bitcoin is Freedom panel, I realized, oh no, this is it, and sort of just dove in. And then I realized, oh, okay, maybe I should study more. But definitely learn to study. There's a lot of free information and resources out there. Websites too, right? What Bitcoin did, their podcasting site has a great like 101 sort of list of resources. And of course, lop.net for Jameson's Lop's consolidation of resources. With those that are, I guess, wanting to make their mark in Bitcoin, reacquaint yourself with your personal values, so that, well, not only so that you can stay based in what your reason for being in Bitcoin is, but also when you start to lose steam, right? Because a lot of this is unpaid and probably not even recognized, as far as a lot of people don't really give the recognition that this is the most evolutionary technology humanity has had. No one really, a vast majority simply are not connecting with that point and might not be connecting with the points that you do. But as long as you are steeped in why you're doing what you're doing, that is really the fuel you'll need to keep yourself motivated and keep going, because there's not a lot of return other than knowing that you're doing and you're doing and you're fulfilling sort of your core values.
All right, Brittany, we're going to have a little fun. We're going to switch gears and do a quick lightning round. And we're going to have you say the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you these questions. Of course, they're about Bitcoin. So the first thing is, what was the first thing you bought with Bitcoin?
A metal plate where you could etch in seed phrase. That was the very, very first thing.
Okay. Your favorite Bitcoin advocate or thought leader?
Margot Perez immediately popped in my mind. I really admire her for the work that she does, and it's very thorough. But she also is not afraid to maybe be a voice that's unconventional in the Bitcoin space, and she really sticks by what she's saying, and so I really admire her for that. And sort of use that as an inspirational model too, right? For sticking to my values, because even sometimes there can be a lot going on that's popular amongst Bitcoiners that aren't necessarily about Bitcoin, but people really attach to that not everybody agrees with. So yeah, Marco Perez is someone I admire for staying true. And other thought leaders. Oh, well, yeah, shout out to Farida Nabarima and Marcel Lorraine. I just, whenever I think, oh, this might be too much work, they're like, I think of them, and then can get a little bit more energy again and find that energy. And oh, yes, and of course, Lisa Nighet as well. I think she's just really neat how a lot of these very, very big and detailed concepts in Bitcoin and about Bitcoin, and about actually just mathematics and computer science. She just has a really great way of making that approachable for anybody. So I really give her a lot of credit for the work that she's doing too.
One thing you change about the Bitcoin community?
I don't know if there's anything I'd really change, as much as I'd like to just put this reminder about that there might be a lot of things that we very much disagree on, but to remember to come back to the core of it, that we obviously all agree on some things, because to be so entrenched in Bitcoin, there's common shared values there that we'll have, and to not forget about that. Because as time progresses, as maybe different software development needs to happen, as different regulatory implementations take place, let's not lose that sort of cohesiveness and community that we do have, just because we might get distracted by other things or by disagreements.
Are you bullish or bearish on Bitcoin in the next year?
Oh, bullish, of course. And everybody, again, it's a small community in Honolulu, so you hear a lot about like this crazy meme coin, altcoin cycle that's just gonna run, and of course that's gonna that all follows Bitcoin. But looking into, yes, this new presidency that we have, it is very Bitcoin crypto friendly in some ways. I don't know about the privacy and self custody. We'll see, but in some ways very, very friendly. It's only gonna pave more of a path for for institutional adoption. Yeah, I do believe that trickle down effect will happen to where I'm bullish on Bitcoin.
And lastly, one word to describe Bitcoin.
Yeah, freedom. I mean, sorry, freedom is the first word that popped into my head. And maybe that's just because of the Bitcoin is Freedom panel, but that panel was really what made everything click for me. And if you do look back in history, what other technology has allowed us to transmit value in this way, to communicate in this way, to custody our own assets in this way. Yeah, I can't think of any. And that sort of capability allows for more freedom and sovereignty and personal action.
Freedom it is. So, Brittany, thank you for this conversation. It has been incredible. Thank you for sharing your journey, your insights, your passion for Bitcoin with us. Your work with Base 58, Honolulu Bitcoin, Honolulu Bit Devs is truly inspiring. I'm definitely rooting for you, and I'm excited to see what you'll accomplish next.
Thank you so much, Dawdu, for this opportunity to come on to the Bitcoin Source. If you are interested in Bitcoin adoption in Hawaii and Polynesia, sort of in general, please connect with us, hnlbtc.group. We are going through some restructuring, but a lot of different changes and activities that are on our near horizon. Hawaii literally is the most isolated, populated landmass on Earth. So we really are an island unto ourselves. And to grow here, similarly to other Polynesian communities as well, but to grow here, we really do need those connections. And whether you're in Hawaii, you visit often, or just have a love for this land and the Aina, then come out and connect with us.
To our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning into the Bitcoin Source. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe for more conversations about Bitcoin with brilliant thought leaders in the space such as Brittany. Remember, every day is a great day to learn something new about Bitcoin. Until next time, I'm Dawdu. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay Bitcoin focused.